right, guys. Aloha. I'm not going to be able to see you, or you're not be able to see me during this video because I need the whole aspect. All right. So this one is a little bit more complicated. The other ones are pretty kind of straightforward, right? We see the developments. This is going to be more about India and how the Anglo-French rivalry impacted India. So I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of answers. Some of the blanks, please just look in your textbook about the cities and the losses. My focus won't be on those details. If you need me to read the textbook to you, we'll do that later. But I want to point out now the context. When we look at the Mughal Empire, I want to point out it is in India, right? That's India. Okay, India. It's basically South Asia. India is a peninsula that kind of points into the Indian Ocean. And I love Ceylon, which is today called Sri Lanka. I always call it the teardrop of India. Mughal India is not the India, the country today. It includes India, but it includes Pakistan. It includes Bangladesh and a couple of the other kingdoms that are up in the Himalayas. This is a pretty ginormous empire. But with the context before we get into it, I want you to know that the Mughal Empire was a power vacuum. Okay? Vacuum. It was a power vacuum because it was divided in two ways. So it's going to be divided, not united. And if it's divided and not united, it turns into a power vacuum. This power vacuum is going to turn in what we call a theater of war when we get to the 7 Years' War, which you might remember as the French and Indian War. This is a key war of colonialism between the French and the British. But we'll see that as we speak, as we teach. So this is divided. First, let's talk about political. Politically, instead of a united kingdom with one emperor, what will happen is the emperor is going to rely on the local princes called Rajas. And the Rajas are local Indian princes who are extremely competitive. You might say, hey, Wass, this is like Italy. I would disagree. I think it's more like the HRE. The Holy Roman Empire has a sense of unity, as the Mughal Empire has with the empire, but it is internally divided by the princes. Here, it's going to be the Rajas. I hope that makes sense. And that competitive nature of the Rajas will allow for first the Portuguese, then the British and the French to colonize. Religiously, India has been historically Hindu, but the Mughals brought Islam. And I just want to point out, Hindu and Islam, other than religion and the discussion of God, there is very little similarities. And religiously, I don't really understand how Hinduism and Islam can cohabitate at this moment, especially as the Mughals attempted to centralize their authority. So with that, you have religious division. So with religious division and political division, the Mughal Empire was divided to the point it becomes a power vacuum. And with that, a little side note, if we go to our discussion about Da Gama, remember, Da Gama is going to exploit that local division and bring back what? Thousands of percent of profit. There is an economic element to this. India, and I'm going to just give you some stuff here. You don't need to write it all down, but they are best known for, they invent cotton textiles. They have silk here, like China. They also have spices. They have a ton of value. India has more economic value than even the Spice Islands. So with that, this is why it becomes a hotbed. One of my fun facts here is, I hope you guys did notice that the Dutch East India Company tries to get here, but almost immediately they realize it's not worth their time because it's the Dutch East India Company. They can't compete against the powerful British and the French. But that's it. I hope you see that map. I hope that makes sense. Again, go back to your books. I just want to make sure here we see this British inroads. I think I got that from the reading. We just see that the British are going to expand. This is going to be the British East India Company. The British East India Company is as powerful as the Dutch East India Company. They are mad wealthy. Okay, we're going to see that in a second. But with this, we begin to see how Britain is using the economic factors, which is not a surprise because remember, Henry VII, the Burger King, helps create the infrastructure. So that's where we are right now. Now, with the British East India Company having such a strikingly important value increase, right? The French begin to get involved. Well, the French, they want to get involved in the valuable trade. So this is why they're going to challenge the British. Remember, this is the Anglo or English French rivalry. And the French believe, and at this moment, we'll find out a little bit later, the French was the most powerful country in Europe. This is going to be the time of a guy named Louis XIV. So this is a little bit, this is much later in our typical timeline. This is not the Renaissance, but it's where Dr. Spivogel puts it. So that's what we're looking at. So right now we're looking at India. We're looking at the rivalry between the French and the British. The British were so successful economically, the French want to get involved. Well, of course, there's limited resources, so that's going to cause the 7 Years' War. And the French are going to be able to capture, and I hope you saw that. I think it's Madras. But I just want to point out in this war, the French are going to have early victories. And with those early victories, it appears that the French are on the precipice of a victory. There's a turning point. And again, we're at the British East India Company, which is not a government, but an economic group of merchants led by Sir Robert Clive. So Sir Robert Clive is basically the leader of the East India Company. He begins to organize the 7 Years' War for the East India Company, and he begins to quickly realize, OMG, I don't have the resources to fight the entire French country. So it's the British East India Company versus this French absolutism. French absolutism decides, hey, India is where we're going to fight. They begin to send their resources to that direction. And if the entire French military is going to be fighting the British East India Company, I will tell you that would be kind of like the New England Patriots playing Oscar Smith football. I love my Oscar Smith football team. I think they're the best high school football team in the state. I love them. But what happens if they play the New England Patriots? If you feel like they have a chance, bless your heart, those men would win. It would be the East. So that would be similar. So in the end, the British East India Company is in a position of losing control of India. The turning point occurs when the Black Hole of Calcutta occurs. I hope you saw it. The Black Hole of Calcutta was a moment in time when one of the Rajas imprisoned several score of British citizens or English citizens, and it basically was an in-ground prison, and they were held overnight. Well, at the outcome of that, they all suffocated. It was like it was shoulder to shoulder. It was a horrible moment, and the Black Hole of Calcutta becomes. Sir Robert Clive decides this is the moment in time. He then uses print culture. He sends a message to all the newspapers in England and says, it calls it the Black Hole of Calcutta. It becomes a British nationalizing moment. And as a British nationalizing moment, Parliament and the King declare war on France. So Black Hole of Calcutta changed the nature of this war from a East India Company versus France to a Britain versus French. And at the outcome of this, the British forces, the British Navy is superior. And this is where we get the end. At the Battle of Plassey, there is a significant victory. If you want to know more about that, you can. And at the outcome of the Plassey, not only were the Indian forces defeated and the French were expelled from India, the British East India Company got the power to tax. So in effect, when the British East India Company through using the power of the entire British government, right, and the military, they have a smashing victory at the Battle of Plassey. Then the British East India Company becomes the effective government of India. They transplant. India loses their sovereignty, their independence, as the British East India Company gains the power to tax. So now the British East India Company is not just making profits off trade, they're going to be able to begin to govern the colony through local taxes. I'll talk more about that if you have questions. What you just need to make sure you understand is the Anglo-French rivalry creates a theater of war in India. France is well on its way of victory through French absolutism, where they're going to send all of the pressure there. The turning point is a Black Hole of Calcutta, in which all the newspapers begin to say, look at this is an attack on the British people. Those are animals who did that to us. That then motivates Parliament to declare war, ushers in a new era, Battle of Plassey, smashing victory. And the big winner is the British East India Company.